18 months ago, I created one page on one app that every single one of you probably have on your phone right now, the Notes app, and my life has never been the same. I know what you're thinking. Yeah, okay, the Notes app changed your life. I'm sure it did, but it genuinely did. Here's how. In 2022, I decided it was time to get serious about my future. The issue was I had no idea what I wanted. I was caught between two completely different visions, one of building my own business and one of building a successful career in the corporate world. So I decided to pursue both to keep both options open. I went to the networking events, I made sure to keep up my grades at uni, and I started my first corporate job. At the same time, I started posting on social media, reading a bunch of different business books, and trying a whole heap of different side hustles. It was going great. I was doing both exactly like I wanted, but I had one issue. My brain would not turn off, even when I was in bed exhausted. I lived in constant chaos, so overwhelmed by the constant influx of information and tasks that I could never keep up with. I was so stressed that I would forget about a work task or a uni assignment. I was constantly replaying conversations to make sure I wouldn't forget anything. It felt like I had so many balls up in the air that I was trying to juggle, and I just could not keep up with them all. So it became a repeated pattern. My alarm would jolt me awake at 6 a.m. My brain immediately bombarded me with everything I had to do that day and everything I hadn't done the day before. I'd try to meditate and just give up when even that wouldn't calm my mind. And instead, I'd sit down at my desk to dive into the first task that came to mind, realizing an hour later that I'd completely forgotten about the work report that was due later that day. As I said, complete chaos. When I wasn't working, I was consumed by thoughts about how I should be working. And when I was working, I couldn't focus enough to actually get anything done. This went on for months. I felt so stuck. I was working so hard. I wanted to be successful so badly. I wanted to prove society wrong, to show the world, to show myself that I could balance my personal goals and my work life. But my brain was constantly on overdrive, and I just knew that I could not keep living in this state. Now, during this time, I came across the book Getting Things Done by David Allen. Turns out it's a productivity cult classic, and listening to this book is what finally showed me the overwhelm, the mental fatigue, the stress and anxiety. It was all normal, but it didn't have to be. All I needed to boost my mental clarity and productivity and actually be able to prioritize what mattered most was a way to organize my thoughts. And organizing my thoughts started with what Allen called a mind sweep, what most people know as a brain dump. The best way that I can describe a brain dump is taking everything in your head, all the thoughts, ideas, tasks, recommendations, and transferring it outside your head. A simple way to externalize all the noise. You're telling me that writing your thoughts down on your phone cured your stress, brain fog, and overload. Okay. If you're doubtful, I get it. I was too. But here's the science behind why brain dumping carries so much power, especially for knowledge workers and especially with today's distraction epidemic. Every day we consume 74 gigabytes of information. This is the same amount that an extremely intelligent person consumed in an entire lifetime 500 years ago. Combine this with our 70,000 daily thoughts and the buildup of all of these over the past days, weeks, months, even years, and it's easy to see why we feel like we're constantly overloaded. Now, information is 100% necessary to create good work and live a meaningful life, but not at the rate that we are currently experiencing it. This is what happens when we are exposed to information. Consuming more information is initially related to better decisions and better performance. This is until we reach a tipping point, the point of information overload, which, yes, is actually a thing. At this point, the amount of information we consume exceeds the amount that our brain can handle. Instead, we go into a state of distraction, stress, and as the name suggests, mental overload. Our head is too full to take anything else in, and when we try and do other tasks, all we can hear is the background hum of stress and the little hits of anxiety. It gives us the feeling that there's something constantly pushing down on us, but we can't quite work out what. So the point of brain dumping isn't really to action everything in your head. It's to work out what's in your head, get that out, and plan to action it, to know that you will action it, because planning is what reduces the subconscious stress. You go from knowing that you have a million things to do but not knowing what they are or when they will get done, to gaining back a sense of control because you know what you have to do, you've planned to get it done, and you know that it's going to be completed. The second reason brain dumping is so powerful is because it's the simplest productivity booster. If I told you there was one thing you could do to get better sleep, maximize your focus, increase your brain power, eliminate half your distractions, never forget anything important, and save you hours of time searching for those recommendations or that present that your dad said that he wanted 2 months ago that you just can't remember, how much would you give for that? Well, brain dumping gives you all of it for free. It takes back the small mental pieces allocated to remembering an idea or task and offloads them to a device that can remember it without a second thought. It's like taking a computer with 100 apps and 100 tabs open and shutting everything down except the ones that you need right now. The more mental pieces we take back, or the more tabs that we shut down, the faster our mind runs, the more organized our mind feels, and the better our productivity, our lives become. I spent hours of my life searching for the best productivity tools, hacks, and tips. Turns out there was a solution right in front of my eyes that worked 10 times better than any of these. So let's get into how you can actually start brain dumping. There's 2 ways that you can use brain dumping. The first is what I call a casual relationship. I can't speak from experience, but casual relationships typically have very little commitment. You use them when you need, they relieve some stress and anxiety, and there's no real system or structure to them. The same thing applies with casual brain dumping. They are perfect for when you need a quick, convenient way to calm your mind, to get everything out of your head so you can focus on what's right in front of you. This is how my relationship with brain dumping started. It's extremely simple. Grab a notebook and pen or your notes app. Then set a timer for 5 to 10 minutes. Third, remind yourself that writing things down does not mean that you have to action them right now. Fourth, allow yourself to write down anything and everything on your mind without judgment. Once you've got it all down, put your list aside, take a quick 2-minute reset, and then start your work. You can then come back to your list later to action it if you want to. Now, the third step to this, reminding yourself that you don't have to action it right now, is extremely important. Missing this is what gets in the way of brain dumping for so many people. When I first started brain dumping, I had so much resistance to it. It almost made me feel more stressed because in my mind, writing something down meant acknowledging it, and acknowledging it meant that I had to action it. It was easier to operate on a basis of ignore it until I can't ignore it anymore than to face the reality of everything I had to do. If you have the same train of thought, this is your permission slip. You do not have to action anything that you write down. You do not have to look at that list again. You can throw it out if you really want to. Your casual relationship can just be a one-night stand. Is this the ideal option? Not really, but it's a really good starting point. It's one step up from not brain dumping at all, or worse, letting your brain dump stress you out. This casual brain dumping will leave you with better focus and clarity, less stress and mental noise, and an easy way to get a bigger perspective of all your thoughts and feelings. So if you want a convenient, low commitment stress outlet that temporarily clears your mind, then a casual relationship is for you. Personally, I continued in my casual relationship for a couple of months, but I soon found an issue. This relationship was a short-term fix, not a long-term solution to my overwhelmed mind. Yes, my work sessions became more focused, but I was still waking up in the morning with that massive weight immediately pressing on my chest of everything that was in my mind. I still felt like I was tossing and turning, thinking all night instead of actually sleeping. So I decided that it was time to turn my brain dumping into a committed relationship. It takes traditional brain dumps and turns them into a system that leaves you with a place to capture all of your thoughts, ideas, recommendations, and tasks. It gives you a list of tasks that you have to action either now or in the future, and a place to reference everything that you can't action. So things like book recommendations, present ideas, creative ideas, or articles. We're no longer making a list that keeps getting longer and longer and more overwhelming. Instead, we're creating a bigger system that's given inputs, our brain dumps, and leaves them organized and actioned. This is how I have permanently reduced my information overload, the continuous presence of background stress and anxiety, and the feeling like everything in my life is in a million different places and I can never be present in the moment. I honestly cannot live without this system now, and so I want to share with you how you can create your own from scratch. Step 1 is to decide on your capture space. Whatever tool you use to house your brain dumps, it must have almost no resistance to access. It has to be easy. The first brain dump page I created was in Notion. It made sense. I organized my life there, so I may as well put my brain dumps straight into that system. But as much as I loved Notion, my brain dumps just did not work in there, so I switched to the Notes app. Notion required internet, the Notes app didn't. Notion took 5 to 10 seconds to load and the Notes app took 2. Notion had no easy search function, but the Notes app did. This is how the Notes app changed my life. And with Apple's device sync, I can move this across to my laptop automatically as well. So think about the easiest place to capture your ideas. It could be the Notes app, it could be Notion, it could be sending a text message thread to yourself, or if you're really old school, it could just be a pocket notebook. Choose one and stick with it. The place isn't important as long as you use it. Step 2 is to create a place to keep your tasks. You likely have a method of keeping track of your tasks right now, whether that's a physical to-do list or your calendar or an online system. But if you're anything like 2022 me, you're probably operating this by keeping everything in your head and then pulling the tasks from your head as you plan each day. What we want to do is to create one master to-do list that houses all of these tasks for us. A list that again, you can pull from when you plan your day, but that's no longer sitting in your head. This could be as simple as creating a separate page in your Notes app that you just move all of these tasks into. I personally use a master to-do list on Notion because I love the categorization that it gives me. This to-do list means that you can put all of your tasks in one place and have a single source for everything that you have to do at any one point in your life. It means that you can categorize and sort your tasks based on due date, context, priority, and more. And it also lets you include files and other notes under each task to keep it all in one place. If you want to use Notion, then I've created a free course that you can use to get started. I'll put the link in the description below. Step 3 is to create a place to keep your references. So we have a place for all of our actionable tasks, but what about the things that you can't action? Ideas, things to buy, places to visit, recommendations, things you're waiting on others for. This is where the reference list comes in. Again, if you're using Notes, simply create a separate Notes page for each reference list. If you're using Notion, create a separate Notion page for each reference list. You can keep this extremely simple by just writing everything down in dot points under each page. Or you could go a step further by putting everything into a database under each list. And I'm going to show you just how far you can take this, but don't feel like you need to do this, especially first off. So I keep book recommendations in my to read reference page under a database. I can categorize the book based on type, genre, status, and rating. I've also set up a template within each database so that I can write notes on the books as I read them. Doing this gives me one place to reference whenever I want to know anything about books that I've already read or books that I want to read in the future. What I would suggest for most people is just to start simple. Create a page for each reference, use dot points, and when you have spare time and if you want to, then you can play around with some more complex options. Here's some inspiration you can use to get you started. These are things that I've done for myself and for some of my clients. To buy, to cook, to read, to watch, waiting on, present ideas, places to visit, to drink, and someday maybe lists for things you might like to do in the future. This saves you not only mental energy, but also an incredible amount of time going and searching for information and inspiration. Step 4, and the most important step, is to turn brain dumping and organizing into a habit. This is what really brings the system to life. Now, if you think about a committed relationship, then you are talking to your partner every day, probably multiple times a day. You'll see them at least once a week, and most of the time you enjoy talking to them. This is what we want to emulate with our brain dumping. We want it to be an ever-present partner in our life. So create the habit of writing things in your brain dump list every time you get the opportunity. You could even set an hourly alarm for the first few days to help you get into the habit. Then create the habit of organizing and sorting your list. Most of the time I'll do this twice a week, normally once on my Sunday reset, and the other one will be during the week, maybe on the train on the way home from work. Like any good habit, it's not necessarily going to be easy at first. You'll probably forget, you'll feel resistance, it might feel annoying, but once you start reaping the rewards, the mental clarity, the stress reduction, the sense that your life is finally organized, you will not want to stop. So start by making it something that you look forward to. Put on some music whilst you do it. Connect with friends and do it together. Even do a weekly coffee date with yourself and make that your time for organizing everything. Like any habit, the key to consistency is making it something you enjoy. I genuinely cannot explain how much this has changed my life. I no longer feel constant overwhelm. I no longer feel like I'm barely keeping my head above water. I no longer have the constant hum of background noise and subconscious stress. This isn't something that we were taught in school, but in our society, it is honestly an essential skill. So I hope this gave you the masterclass that school never did. And if you are ready to put it into action, then here are your action steps. First, decide whether to enter a casual relationship to try it out first, or whether you're ready to go straight into a committed relationship. Second, if you chose casual, then do a few brain dumps throughout this week using the 6 steps that we went through in the casual brain dumping section. And third, if you chose committed, decide on one capture space, set it up, and make it as easy as possible to use. Then create a place to keep your tasks. Remember, you can take the free Notion course if you want to get started with Notion. Otherwise, feel free to use your Notes app or just a basic version of whatever you're using right now. Make sure you also have a place to keep your reference list. You could do this as one big list or lots of separate ones. And finally, implement 2 to 3 strategies that will help you to turn brain dumping and organizing into an ongoing habit. If you got this far, thank you. I appreciate your support endlessly. Please like this video and subscribe if you found it helpful, and comment any future videos that you would love to see.